Posing, in-betweening, cleaning up, color slapping, comping the whole thing and all that for, roughly thousands of shots.
Spawn fight fire with fire. Spawn ultra action figures, each sold separately.
So recently, I saw this tweet going around Twitter talking about Madam Web and pre-MCU comic movies. Please understand that Madam Web and Morbius type movies were all we were getting before the MCU. Like, it was that caliber of bad. So whenever people are like, insert MCU movie here is bad, I'm like, what? The MCU has been a blessing to comic book media. I'm not saying all of the MCU projects were bangers. I'm just saying, when you say bad, I'm not sure you realize what bad truly is. And a lot of people are taking issue with this. People saying how there are so many fantastic comic films before the MCU. We had Donner's Superman, 60s Batman, which is good. It's good. It's fun and it's campy. It's good. The Tim Burton Batman films, the first two Nolan Batman films, there are a lot of Batman movies. The first two Raimi Spider-Man movies, the X-Men films. And while I agree with many people's responses, it kind of made me realize something. All of the examples people were using of great comic book adaptations, they're all from the big two. Either Marvel or DC movies that were released before 2007. To a lot of people and the general public, when they think comic books, they think Marvel or DC. So many people fail to see and forget that that's nowhere near the case. That's never been the case. There are some amazing, breathtaking comic books and comic book movies that were released well before 2007 and even after the start of the MCU. Movies and books that aren't Marvel or DC. Some movies that are cult classics, others household names, and a few that you'd be shocked to find out are even based off comics to begin with. So I thought it'd be a good idea to spread the word on comic adaptations that aren't just Marvel or DC, and some that aren't even superhero comics to begin with. Some of the best films to adapt the medium, or maybe some that I just have a really soft spot for. I won't be covering every non-Marvel or DC comic movie because that's a very long list. But if this video does well, then hell, maybe I'll make another one. If one of your favorites aren't on this list, drop it in the comments and I might mention it in a future video. This isn't going to be a super deep dive into these films. Think of this as a list of recommendations to both read and watch for those unfamiliar, with some breakdowns and personal thoughts thrown in.
Twilight Comics has Hellboy miniatures, Hellboy the role-playing game, and a whole lot more cool stuff.
Lunchboxes.
Buddy! 6 times a day. He's got a thing for cats. He'll be his nanny, his keeper, his best friend. He never goes out unsupervised.
Oh.
I hate those comic books. They never get the eyes right.
Hellboy.
What happens when you combine stunning, graphic, dynamic artwork by Mike Mignola, an incredible world that incorporates sci-fi, high fantasy, eldritch horror, mythology, and noir fiction, and the genius, beautiful mind of Guillermo del Toro, two of the best monster movies of the 2000s. The Hellboy movies follow Hellboy, a demon summoned to Earth during World War II by Nazis, well, specifically Rasputin with the help of Nazis, and adopted by the American Supernatural Task Force, the BPRD. He fights Nazis, stops the end of the world, and goes face to face with the supernatural. Yeah, it's pretty fucking sick.
Red Bean, stop!
The films take the character and world of the Hellboy comics and translate it in a way that both represents the comics, but are their own works of art. The story and titular character himself mostly resembled the comic, with the movie taking inspiration from multiple Hellboy comics and stories, from Seeds of Destruction to The Corpse, with some minor differences that add up to a Hellboy that resembles Mignola's, but is still Del Toro's own original take on the character, incorporating that underdog monster theme that Del Toro loves to touch on in his films.
What have you done to my baby?
Baby's fine.
You're free!
Hellboy, what you do to that
The baby's fine.
Don't move! Hands in the air! He's got a weapon in his hand!
That is his hand!
To compare the comics to the films, in the comics, HB is known to the general public. In the movies, he's a secret. In the comics, Hellboy and Liz are close friends. In the movie, they're a couple. He's also a lot more lovesick in the movies.
She took his picture. She took his picture. She took his picture. Oh, crap.
There's a lot of fans that take issue with the differences in the movies, saying that it's too strong of a departure from the Big Red that we've gotten to know since the 90s. But personally, I really like the differences in the movie. The comics and films are different enough that you can enjoy both as their own stories, but are similar enough that you can recognize the films as Hellboy. They still have the Hellboy stuff we all love, the monsters, the lore, tight action, but with that Del Toro charm. Despite the differences, this movie made many, many people Hellboy fans, and got a lot of people, including myself, to pick up the books. I'd be interested to see if Hellboy still had a pop culture presence if these movies didn't come out. If you want to check out the comics, I recommend starting wherever interests you. Hellboy is kind of an anthology series. There is an overarching story, but for the most part it's short stories following Hellboy through the decades dealing with the paranormal. I think for beginners, I'd recommend Hellboy: The Wolves of St. August. It's a short and sweet story that gets the general vibe of Hellboy comics across. It has some amazing art by Mignola and beautiful colors by James Sinclair. I think it's a must-read for new Hellboy fans to dip their toes into Mignola's world. The movies are incredible, and even with all the differences, I highly recommend any monster, horror, or dirty sci-fi fans check this out. Even the 2019 one, I kinda would recommend people give it a chance.
You what?
Look, okay, people hate that movie. They hate that movie so much. But I kind of like it. I'm actually a defender of it. While it has its issues and is even less accurate character-wise to the comics, I think the designs and monsters that take more directly from the comics are fantastic. The action is pretty good, and I think it works well as just a fun romp using the characters and world of Hellboy. Also, I forgot to write this down. Check out the animated movies. There's two 90-minute animated movies that you can get on Amazon, and they're pretty good. They have the voice cast of the original Hellboy movies, and they're more accurate to the Hellboy comics and the characters. I'd check them out if I were you.
I think you're a bad person, and don't take this the wrong way.
All right.
But I think you represent evil.
Yeah.
And your presence makes any kind of progress in the universe
Partying hard or hardly partying?
Hardly interested.
You're mean!
What you think you're doing? Get up that goddamn noise! Rock and roll, baby. Freedom of speech. What do you think this is? Woodstock?
That's my rule.
Let's go, Pop.
The guy spends more time in here than I do.
Parking lot, beauty.
Ghostworld was released in 2001, directed by Terry Zwigoff. Man, I'm Googling that. Alright, let's have a look.
Terry's wig off.
Like, tear his wig. What? Directed by Terry Zwigoff, who actually has a history in being a comic book editor and underground comics publisher, and directed Crumb, a documentary on one of his friends, R. Crumb, who was a cartoonist known for creating Fritz the Cat. The film is based on a comic of the same name, created by Daniel Clowes. Clowes? God, I have to look this one too. Daniel Clowes pronunciation.
Daniel Clowes.
Okay, good, I was right. Clowes actually co-wrote the movie with Clowes actually co-wrote the movie with Zwigoff. I wanted to see how he could translate his comic into a completely different medium. You know what? Out of all the movies on this list, I actually haven't seen this one. I should check it out before recommending it. Someone's just posted the whole thing on YouTube for free. So, yeah, I'm gonna go watch it now.
This is gonna be great. So exciting.
2 hours later.
That was the best end credit sequence to any comic book movie I've seen. This movie is a lot harder to recommend to the average person compared to the other ones on this list. It's a cult classic for a reason. It's very slow, it's very late 90s, early 2000s. So, yeah, strap in for the main characters dropping slurs.
God, what a bunch of
Really can't say that word anymore.
Making fun of feminism? Criticizing video game violence, the usual normal people are stupid, but I'm cool. But even with all that stuff, it actually feels like it criticizes that worldview by the end of the film. It makes you think it's, oh, we are so much better than normal people. Normal people are dumb. But it's not. It's more so about having to grow up after high school and the mistakes you make as a young adult. I'm so used to media like this, painting people who see the world differently as 100% in the right, and the world is just as terrible as they say it is. But this film, I think, really shows the flaw in that sense of cynicism. Cynicism. And how people with that worldview can still make dumb decisions and aren't any better than the people they belittle. And this movie was really interesting to sit through, and on reflection had some really relatable moments and scenes. I actually had to sit with this movie for a bit after watching it and really take it in. And after some thought, I really appreciate it and the message it's trying to tell. But in saying that, I can also see how people could struggle to sit through it.
Holy God, what are you showing me? His head. Come on! Open your eyes!
It's not flashy with big action scenes or creature designs. It's all very down to earth and quiet. But that's why it's important to add this movie to this list. It shows just how much variety comic book movies and comics can be. Comic books aren't just one thing. They aren't just big studio action stories with sci-fi or fantasy twists. Sometimes they're mature, independent, coming-of-age stories. Also, okay, quick rattle off of things. I took notes when I was watching this movie, and here's like 3 things I noticed that was like, what? I needed to show this. Okay, that's Goku, right? Like, I couldn't pay attention to what the hell was happening in this scene because all I saw was Goku. Second of all, this guy looked like Bo Burnham. I feel like he looks like Bo Burnham. Thirdly, why did he fart like that?
Maybe she got another boyfriend.
Legend of the warrior called She-Ra. They said she would
I'm not a hero because calling yourself a hero makes you a self-apologizing narcissist.
Some of us don't get the happily ever after we're looking for. Because it ain't that kind of kingdom. And this ain't that kind of story.
The queen killer is still out there.
Everyone is scared.
No, freak!
Not since Lord Monster has anything been so hated.
He never should have been
Because he wasn't one of us and he hated us for it.
commoner. He's vile.
He's got no place in this kingdom.
He's a murderer.
He's a monster.
He's perfect.
I'm a girl just like. I'm a girl just.
Nimona is my animated movie of 2023. It's an emotional, heartfelt, funny film that's gay as hell. It follows the shapeshifting Nimona and exiled knight Ballister as they try to clear Ballister's name from a crime he didn't commit.
You need the squire? Then let's go get him. Let's go get him.
A few years ago, you may have heard some drama around this film. The film was originally animated and in production by Blue Sky, but it was dropped by Disney after buying Fox, and Fox owns Blue Sky. Luckily, it was brought back by Annapurna and distributed by Netflix, which also means it'll never get a physical release, which sucks. But thank God it was able to be finished and released to the public, because this movie's so good.
You want to know who the kid is?
Oh, I like where this is going.
You want to show him?
I'd love to.
Let's break stuff.
Nimona is based off the YA comic Nimona by Andy Stevenson. You may recognize Andy's work maybe from his other comics like Lumberjanes, or the Netflix animated series She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, both of which are also gay as hell. The movie, like most adaptations, isn't one-to-one, and rather takes the general story of the comic and twists it a bit. While I already mentioned that this is my fave animated movie of 2023, it's also the best comic book movie of 2023, which isn't saying a lot in some cases.
I told you that shirt was hideous.
But this is the same year we got Mutant Mayhem and Across the Spider-Verse, and those movies were phenomenal. Okay, well, I haven't seen Mutant Mayhem yet, but all my friends say it's phenomenal, so I'm just gonna assume it's phenomenal. The movie starts off solid and just keeps getting better and better as you watch, with an ending that, oh God, every time I watch it, it gets me emotional. The movie's art direction is incredible. I'm obsessed with the character designs, and the combination of sci-fi and techno-dystopia with knights and dragons is so cool. The film really tries to make fun of traditional fairy tale stories and even showing the flaws in some modern stories where the system isn't the problem, it's the people that abuse the system, tends to be the main moral, which you see in a lot of comic books and comic adaptations.
What are you doing?
What?
You're doing some cool ass shit. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, man, help me out.
The movie actually reminds me a lot of what Shrek was in the 2000s, in making fun of and breaking down Disney and other films. What interests me most about the movie and comic, other than the fantastic story, characters, and art, was the beginning of the comic. I don't mean the beginning of the story, I mean how the comic came to be. Starting out as a webcomic on Tumblr by an art student that made fan art and gushed about their OCs on an account that's still up. After the film came out, I remember Tumblr blowing up, with people reposting old sketches and posts from Andy's account nearly 10 years ago, talking about an OC he came up with and some sketches and ideas, seeing how that eventually turned into a massive film that got nominated for Best Animated Picture at the Oscars. If you love animated films, movies about fighting against Big Brother and rebelling, love queer stories made by queer people, or even just have some kids that would love something new to sink their teeth into, I highly recommend the film and the comic. Okay, update actually. As I was writing the script, Netflix posted just the full movie on YouTube. Whole thing. Full movie. No, it's gonna go down soon. So you know what? Actually, by the time I'm editing this, it's probably already gone. So maybe forget what I just said, but that's still insane. Right now, I think it has 2 million views. Jesus, this movie's massive. Also, Chloe Grace Moretz, who's the voice of Nimona, won Best Voice Actor for a feature at the Annie Awards.
Well, if you're really looking for some feedback, it was a little dramatic. I mean, you're not going to win any awards or anything, but it was good.
I've never even taken a class.
Really? As a surprise.
Not a one.
I like to reenact Close Encounters before I eat my meal. That's how I roll.
That is disgusting.
That's how I roll.
I've already mentioned I haven't seen Mutant Mayhem yet, so what I'm about to say might change after viewing that, but at this very moment, as I write this script, sitting down on the floor with my back against my couch at exactly 2 a.m. in the morning, TMNT is the best Ninja Turtles movie we have ever gotten, and is one of my most watched movies of all time. I cannot keep count of the amount of times I've watched this movie, and it never grows old. I've watched it on DVD, on streaming, on the plane, even at the cinema when it first came out. I remember seeing all the cutouts in the cinema, and I remember being so confused why Shredder wasn't in any of the ads or toys, and being shocked that in the first 5 minutes they explained that, yeah, Shredder's already dead in this one. I knew this movie was not gonna be like other Turtles movies. The film was directed by and written by Kevin Monroe, and stars, get this, actual voice actors. A Hollywood, big franchise animated film where more than half the cast are trained professional voice actors. There are some celebrity casting, but those are reserved for side characters or narration. Holy shit! I miss when this was the standard. The film takes inspiration from the darker tone of the original Mirage comics the franchise is based on, by Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, while still having some fun, colourful moments like the cartoon in previous films.
Happy birthday from Cowabunga!
The movie actually hints at being in the same timeline as the original 3 live-action Turtles movies, which explains why Shredder has already cocked it. Those movies are also great movies that try and succeed to adapt the comics while keeping influence from the TV series. This franchise is actually really interesting because almost every adaptation inspires the next ones. The show introduced more personality to the turtles and the colored bandanas, the movies Leo and Raph butting heads, which we'll get to later, the 03 series bringing in more comic influences and exploring more than just the mutants and the foot, 2012 having April the same age as the turtles, and so on and so much more stuff that keeps the franchise fresh for new generations. This film takes place when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are no longer teenagers. Yeah, that's right, these are the young adult Mutant Ninja Turtles. Except they're not really ninjas anymore. Not since defeating Shredder and Leo being sent out into the world by Splinter to train, the boys have gotten jobs for themselves, so it's more young adult mutant minimum wage turtles, but YAMMWT doesn't really roll off the tongue.
No, I'm not playing hard to get. I'm telling you, sir, it's not that kind of phone line.
The main story of this film is honestly not the selling point. Sure, the story goes into the Turtles' more cosmic tone and introduces a new character to the Turtles' mythos. But the heart of this film, and the reason why I think it's so beloved to this day, is the conflict between Leo and Raph. Okay, so slight spoilers, not a lot, I'll try to keep it to a minimum, but I think if you want to get the most out of this movie, I recommend stopping the video and watching the movie. It's not long, and I guarantee you won't regret it. Okay. Ramble time. There's a fight that happens between Leo and Raph halfway through this movie, and oh my god. I've heard some people say that this scene feels out of character for Leo, but I think it's perfectly in character. Raph is someone who gets angry and lashes out because he doesn't ever think he's good enough. He feels ashamed of himself and takes it out in the world because of it. Leo, while being more cool-headed, has an ego, a very big one. And you need an ego to be a leader. You need confidence in yourself and your plan to know you can lead your team to victory. But in this movie, we really see Leo's ego come out and the worst of both brothers.
Don't push it, Leo. You can't leave home and come back expecting us to fall in line again like your little soldiers.
Hey, I was training to be a better leader for you. Why do you hate me for that?
And whoever said I wanted to be led? I'm better off calling my own shots now. Get used to it.
You aren't ready. You're impatient and hot-tempered, and more importantly, I'm better than you.
The fight scene on top of the building, with the rain and neon lights, with the both of them arguing and getting so angry at the other. This is one of my favorite scenes in any comic book movie, and perfectly encapsulates why I love these characters. Watch this movie. While it has some less interesting elements with dimensions and monsters, and Donnie and Mikey don't really get their time to shine, it's worth it alone for the story of these two brothers struggling with their relationship with the other. The Ninja Turtles as a franchise, toys, movies, shows, wouldn't be where they are today without the original comics. And even the ongoing comics. They're still making Ninja Turtle comics to this day, with some really standout ones, like The Last Ronin, which at time of typing this is getting a video game adaptation. The Turtles comics touch on almost every genre of comic. I'm positive there's an issue or run out there for every comic book fan.
We are ninjas. We strike hard, defend, protect, and fade into the night. And there ain't no bad guy or monster gonna ever change that. That's what's important. And that's why we'll always be brothers.
Oh, I love being a turtle.
All play to the...
All right, Tom. We're ready.
I love this job.
When it comes to comic book films, I feel like there's a massive part that people forget about or just refuse to mention. What if I told you that there were non-Marvel and DC movies that I haven't mentioned that are some of the most incredible animated films, some of the biggest box office hits, and some of the most impactful pieces of art that has influenced millions? And what if I told you there is a 99% chance you've seen at least one of them? But so many people, for some reason, don't consider them comic book movies because comic books go by a different name in their country. Manga.
comics insanely popular. They transcend generations and often borders.
These films are loved by so many people and have left such a massive footprint on animation and comic books. But so many people will say that these don't count just because Japanese manga and Western comics are so different. They're both comic books. Manga is just as much comics as comic strips or one-panel comics are. At the end of the day, it's all comics. Modern Western comics and Japanese manga are constantly influencing and taking inspiration from one another. Stuff like My Hero Academia and One Punch Man wouldn't exist without Western superhero comics. And comics like Scott Pilgrim and Radiant Black wouldn't exist without the influences of anime, manga, and tokusatsu. People are so adamant to put Western comics and manga against each other, gloating how much manga is outselling Western comics or how much money MCU movies are bringing in internationally. This fighting is so stupid! We should be embracing the medium and coming together in our love of comics and the stories they can tell. Western comics isn't better than manga, and manga isn't better than Western comics. They are both so unique but have more similarities than differences. I've seen a lot of Western comics fans and manga fans refuse to step into the other's world, and those people are missing out on some of the best adaptations of comic books and some of the best comic books of all time. Comic books are so diverse. They're filled with breathtaking stories for all ages and people from around the globe, and are so much more than just Marvel or DC or even typical Western superheroes. Don't get me wrong, I love my Cape stories. I'm absolutely obsessed with Batman. But comics are an art form that have thousands of millions of stories ranging from every country on the planet and every genre. More people should be turning into these amazing, unique pieces of art, whether it be their adaptations on the big screen, silver screen, or the ink-drenched books they originate from. I really hope that in watching this video, you've been introduced to so many new worlds and stories, and plan on digging into a new film or comic you would have otherwise never given the time of day. And if none of these interest you, trust me, there are so many more for you to sink your teeth into.